The Zyrelian Empire was on the edge of destruction. Once, they ruled 1,000 worlds, their banners waving proudly across the stars. But now, their cities burned, their armies crumbled, and their people lived in fear. The VORAC Dominion, a ruthless warrior race, had been hunting them for years, crushing planet after planet without mercy. In the Grand Palace of Zarelia Prime, Queen Valorazirin stood in the war chamber, staring at the holographic map of her empire. Every day, the red zones spread further. The VORAC were unstoppable. Her generals had no solutions. Her advisors only whispered of surrender. But Valora refused to kneel. She had read the ancient records. There was still one hope. She turned to her trusted scholar, Ilaris, an elder Zarelian who had spent his life studying old myths. "The human champion," Valora said firmly. "The legend says he exists." Ilaris hesitated. "Your Majesty, humans disappeared centuries ago. The Council erased all records of them. No one even knows if they survived." Valora's golden eyes burned with determination. The Council feared them for a reason. They were warriors unlike any the galaxy had seen. If even one remains, we must find him. Her commanders exchanged uneasy glances. "And if this human is dead?" General VORAC asked. "Then our people are dead too," Valora replied. Silence filled the chamber. No one could argue with the truth. A desperate journey. 2 days later, Valora's personal warship, the Starborn, left Zyrelian space. She traveled with only a small team. Ilaris, her elite guards, and the best pilot in the fleet, Captain Jorik. Their destination was a forbidden sector of space, where the last human world was rumored to exist. The journey was dangerous. The sector was filled with abandoned planets, wreckage of ancient battles, and deadly radiation storms. It was a graveyard of the past, a place no sane being would enter. As they neared the coordinates, the ship's sensors detected something unusual, a weak energy signal coming from a dead planet. "This world, it matches the descriptions from the old records," Ilaris murmured, checking his data. "If the human champion exists, he may be here." Valora nodded. "Prepare for landing." The ruins of Earth. The Starborn descended onto the surface of the planet. It was barren and lifeless. Nothing but ruins stretching for miles. Towers stood half destroyed, massive bridges lay broken, and metal husks of strange vehicles were scattered like skeletons. "This was once a great civilization," Jorik whispered. "Now it's nothing." Valora stepped forward, feeling the weight of history in the air. "Not nothing," she said. "Something still remains." Their scanners led them to an underground facility, still active after all this time. The entrance was blocked by debris, but their guards cleared the way, revealing a metal door covered in strange symbols. Valora placed her hand against it, and the door suddenly hissed open, as if it had been waiting for someone. Inside, they found a sealed chamber, lined with flickering blue lights. At the center stood a stasis pod, covered in dust, its glass frosted over. A faint heartbeat signal echoed through the chamber. Jorik stepped closer, reading the alien text on the screen. "It's a cryopod. Someone is inside." Valora's pulse quickened. "Is it him?" Ilaris adjusted his scanner. "The DNA matches ancient human records." He took a slow breath. "This is him, the last human." Valora stared at the pod, her heart pounding. Could the legend truly be real? Could this forgotten warrior save her people? She reached for the activation panel. If the human champion was inside, it was time for him to awaken. A thick layer of dust covered the ancient cryopod. The screen flickered weakly, displaying unreadable symbols. Queen Valorazirin wiped the surface with her gloved hand, revealing the frozen figure inside. The man was tall, his body covered in a strange, tight suit. His face was rugged, with scars that spoke of battles long forgotten. His chest rose and fell faintly. He was alive. Ilaris, the royal scholar, examined the pod's controls. "This technology is old but advanced. The stasis field is failing. We must wake him now. Velora nodded. Do it. Ilaris pressed a sequence of buttons. Steam hissed from the pod as the glass cover slid open. A rush of cold air filled the chamber. The human gasped. His body jerked, muscles tensing as life returned to his limbs. His eyes shot open, deep blue, sharp, and filled with something ancient and powerful. The guards raised their weapons, but Velora raised a hand. Wait. The human coughed, his breath ragged. Slowly, he sat up, blinking as he adjusted to the dim light. His gaze locked onto Velora. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his lips parted, and a hoarse voice escaped. How long has it been? The last of his kind. Velora stepped forward. You have been asleep for centuries. We came looking for you. The human's brow furrowed. He looked at his hands, flexing his fingers as if remembering how they worked. His movements were slow, but strength radiated from him. Who are you? He finally asked. I am Queen Velora of the Zarelian Empire, she said, standing tall. And you are the last human. The man frowned, his jaw tightening. Last. Ilaris stepped forward. Humanity vanished long ago. No records remain of what happened. The galaxy believes your kind is extinct. Silence filled the room. The human's hands clenched into fists. Velora watched him carefully. There was something in his eyes. Not just loss, but fire. A warrior's fire. What is your name? She asked. The man exhaled, closing his eyes as if searching his memory. Doran. Captain Doran Kane, of the Terran Defense Force. The name carried weight, even after centuries. It was a name that once meant something. A dire warning. Doran swung his legs over the edge of the pod. His body was weak, but his spirit was unbroken. Why did you wake me? He asked. Velora met his gaze. My people are on the brink of extinction. The VORAC Dominion is destroying our worlds. We searched the ancient records and found whispers of a legend, the human champion, a warrior feared by all, the last hope in desperate times. Doran scoffed, running a hand through his short, dark hair. A champion. That's a myth. Ilaris shook his head. The galaxy remembers. Even after centuries, your kind is spoken of in whispers. The Council erased human history because they feared what you could do. Doran stood, wobbling slightly before steadying himself. His sharp eyes studied them. I don't even know how long I've been gone. My world, my people, they're all gone. Velora took a step closer. Yes, but the galaxy still needs you. Doran's expression darkened. He had been a soldier once, a defender of his world. And now, that world no longer existed, but something else did. A chance to fight again. He exhaled sharply. Tell me about these VORAC. The rising storm. As they returned to the Starborn, Doran listened as Velora explained the war. He learned how the Zarelians, once mighty, had been reduced to refugees. How the VORAC ravaged entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but ruin. And worst of all, how there was no one left to stop them. Doran leaned back in his seat. His body still felt weak, but his mind was clear. He turned to Velora. You really think one human can change all this? Velora met his gaze, unwavering. You are not just any human. You are the last of your kind. The galaxy still remembers your people, even after all this time. If the stories are true, then you are more than just a warrior. You are a force the VORAC have never faced before. Doran was silent for a moment. Then, a small smirk formed on his lips. All right, he said. Let's see if this human champion is real. Velora felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the legend was true. And if it was, then the VORAC had no idea what was coming for them. Doran sat in the dimly lit command chamber of the Starborn, a warm drink in his hands. His body still ached from centuries of stasis, but his mind was sharpening. He listened intently as Queen Velora Zirin and her scholar, Ilaris, described the state of the galaxy. The VORAC dominion was ruthless. They conquered planets, wiped out civilizations, and left only ruins behind. The Zerelians were once powerful, but now they were scattered, their fleets broken. Their resistance was weak, their allies too afraid to help. Velora watched him carefully. "Do you understand now why we woke you?" Doran took a slow sip of the drink. It had a strange, bitter taste, but it warmed his body. He set the cup down and leaned forward. "You woke me because you need a fighter." His voice was calm but firm. "You think I can turn the tide of this war?" Ilaris nodded. "More than that. We believe the very sight of a human warrior will shake the galaxy. Even after all these centuries, your kind is still spoken of in whispers." Doran scoffed. "You're betting everything on a legend." Velora's golden eyes met his. "No, we are betting on you. A test of strength." The ship's medical unit had confirmed it. Doran was healthy, but his muscles had weakened from centuries in stasis. He needed to train, to fight again. Velora led him to the combat deck, where warriors trained in hand-to-hand battle. The moment they stepped inside, all eyes turned toward them. Zyrelian fighters, tall, armored, and strong, whispered among themselves. Ilaris gestured toward a battle pit. "You must prove yourself. Let them see that the human champion is real." Doran smirked. "All right. Who's first?" A massive Zerelian warrior stepped forward. His name was Roken, a seasoned fighter with deep scars across his face. He towered over Doran, his arms thick with muscle. "I will test you, human," Roken said, cracking his knuckles. "Let's see if the legend is true." Doran rolled his shoulders. "Try not to break me. I just woke up." The warriors laughed, but Velora remained silent, watching closely. The first fight. The two men stepped into the pit. The floor was smooth metal, and the walls were reinforced. The air was tense. Roken lunged first, swinging a massive fist toward Doran's head. Doran barely dodged. His body was slower than he remembered, but his instincts remained sharp. He countered with a quick jab to Roken's ribs. The Zerelian grunted but didn't back down. "You're fast," Roken admitted. Doran smirked. "You haven't seen anything yet." Roken attacked again, this time with a powerful kick. Doran twisted his body, narrowly avoiding the blow. He moved in close, driving an elbow into Roken's side, then followed up with a precise punch to the jaw. The Zyrelian staggered back, shaking his head. The crowd murmured in shock. No one had expected the human to land such clean hits. But Roken wasn't done. With a growl, he charged at full speed, aiming to slam Doran against the wall. Doran didn't move. Instead, at the last moment, he sidestepped and grabbed Roken's arm, using the warrior's own momentum against him. With a grunt of effort, Doran twisted and threw the massive Zerelian over his shoulder. Roken slammed into the ground. Silence filled the training hall. Doran stepped back, breathing heavily. His muscles burned, but his spirit was alive. Roken groaned and pushed himself up, rubbing his head. Then, to everyone's surprise, he let out a booming laugh. "You fight well, human," he admitted. Perhaps the legends were true after all. The watching warriors murmured in agreement. Velora smiled. This was what they needed. Proof. Hope. Doran looked down at his hands. The fight had awakened something inside him. He wasn't just a relic of the past. He was a warrior. And now he was ready to fight. A new mission. Later that night, Doran stood with Velora and Ilaris in the command chamber. A holographic map of the galaxy floated before them. Ilaris pointed to a glowing red system. The VORAC are preparing to invade Vexus 9, a neutral planet. If they take it, they will control the entire sector. Velora turned to Doran. "We have a small fleet, but we cannot match them in open battle. We need a plan." Doran studied the map. He could feel the old instincts returning. Tactics, strategy. He had fought in wars before. He knew how to win against impossible odds. He looked at Velora and smirked. Then let's give them something they've never seen before. Velora's eyes gleamed. The human champion goes to war. Doran stood in the war chamber, studying the holographic map of Vexus 9. It was a lush planet, home to neutral colonies and rich resources. The VORAC Dominion wanted to conquer it, and the Xyrelian resistance was too weak to stop them. Queen Velora Zirin stood beside him, her golden eyes filled with determination. Ilaris, the scholar, adjusted the map's projection. The VORAC fleet is arriving in 3 days, Ilaris said. They will land here at the main city. He pointed to a cluster of structures near a mountain range. Once they take it, the rest of the planet will fall. Doran crossed his arms. How many ships do we have? Velora hesitated. Only a dozen. Their fleet has over 50. Doran smirked. I've fought worse odds. Roken, the Xyrelian warrior Doran had defeated in training, stepped forward. We are willing to fight, but we need a real plan. Doran stared at the map. His mind worked quickly, analyzing the terrain, the enemy's movement, and the resources available. He was a soldier, a strategist. This was what he was born for. Finally, he looked at Velora. We can't beat them in open battle. She frowned. Then what do you suggest? A grin formed on Doran's face. We don't fight their war. We make them fight ours. The ambush plan. Doran pointed at the mountain pass near the city. This is the key. The VORAC will land here and march straight to the city. If we attack them head-on, we lose. Roken frowned. Then what do? We set traps. We use the terrain against them. Doran's plan was simple but effective. Explosive charges would be placed along the narrow pass, collapsing it once the VORAC entered. Hidden snipers would attack from the cliffs, forcing the enemy into a choke point. A decoy team would lure the main force into the canyon, where their numbers would count for nothing. Once trapped, the Xyrelians would strike fast, taking out their officers first. Velora studied the plan and nodded. It's risky, but it might work. Doran grinned. Risk is my specialty. Preparing for battle. The Xyrelians worked through the night. Warriors set traps, positioned snipers, and prepared ambush points. Engineers planted charges along the cliffs. Doran inspected every position himself. His human instincts gave him an edge. He saw possibilities others missed. Roken joined him near the canyon. I still don't understand. Why are humans so feared? You're smaller than us, weaker in strength. Doran smirked. Because we don't fight fair. Roken chuckled. I like that. The invasion begins. At dawn, the VORAC fleet arrived. The sky turned dark as their massive warships descended. Thousands of enemy troops, clad in black armor, marched toward the city. Doran and his team hid in position. He could hear the heavy footsteps of the VORAC soldiers, their deep voices echoing through the canyon. He took a deep breath. Wait for my signal. The enemy moved deeper into the pass. The VORAC commander, a towering figure with glowing red eyes, led the march. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. Doran raised his hand. Steady. The enemy was almost at the choke point. Now, Doran shouted. The trap is sprung. A deafening explosion rocked the canyon as the charges detonated, collapsing the cliffs behind the VORAC forces. They were trapped. Hidden Xyrelian snipers opened fire from above. Energy blasts rained down, hitting enemy officers first. The VORAC panicked, trying to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. Doran and his team charged in from the sides, striking fast. Roken led a shock squad, tearing through the enemy ranks. Velora fought beside them, her energy blade cutting through enemy armor. Doran weaved through the battlefield with deadly precision. He was faster, smarter. He fought with a mix of human ingenuity and ruthless efficiency, taking down enemies twice his size. The Vorkalf commander roared in rage and charged at Doran. Doran dodged the first swing, then drove a blade into the commander's side. The massive warrior fell to his knees, gasping in shock. Doran stepped closer. "Tell your people, the human champion is real." With one final strike, the commander collapsed. Victory and warning. The remaining Vorkalf forces, leaderless and confused, began to retreat. The Zerelians chased them down, ensuring no survivors. When the dust settled, Velora stood beside Doran. "We won." Doran nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. This was just the beginning. Ilaris approached, looking pale. "We intercepted a transmission. The Vorkalf know about you now." Velora's expression hardened. "Then we must prepare, because soon the whole galaxy will come looking for you." Doran smirked. "Let them come." The battlefield was silent now, except for the distant sound of retreating Vorkalf ships. Smoke and dust hung in the air as Doran stood over the fallen enemy commander. The Zerelians had won, but the cost of victory was clear. Queen Velora Zirin surveyed the field, her golden eyes filled with mixed emotions. Her people had fought bravely, but many had fallen. Doran exhaled sharply and turned to Rokan. "Gather the wounded. We don't leave anyone behind." The Zyrelian warrior nodded and rushed to assist the survivors. Ilaris, the scholar, approached Doran. Her usual calm expression was replaced by concern. "Doran, we intercepted a transmission from the Vorkalf flagship." Doran wiped sweat from his brow. "Let me guess, they're not happy." Ilaris swallowed hard. "It's worse than that. They're calling for reinforcements. The full force of the Vorkalf Dominion will be here soon." Velora clenched her fists. Then this battle was only the beginning. The human champion's next move. Doran studied the battlefield once more. They had won, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. If the full Vorkalf fleet arrived, Vexus 9 would be lost. "We can't stay here," Doran finally said. "We need to regroup and prepare for the next fight." Velora nodded. "Where do we go?" Doran turned to Ilaris. "Do we have any allies nearby?" Ilaris hesitated. "The VORAC clans might help. They hate the Vorkalf, but they don't trust outsiders." Rokan crossed his arms. "Then why would they help us?" Doran smirked. "Because I'll give them a reason. A risky plan." The Zyrelians worked quickly, gathering supplies and preparing their remaining ships for departure. As they boarded their small fleet, Doran stood next to Velora on the bridge. The Queen watched the burning battlefield through the ship's viewport. "We fought so hard for this victory," she said quietly, "and now we must leave it behind." Doran placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Wars aren't won in a single battle. We'll come back stronger." She turned to him, searching his face. "You believe that?" He grinned. "I don't believe. I know." The ships took off, heading toward VORAC space, a dangerous region controlled by ruthless warrior clans. Arrival in VORAC territory. After several hours of travel, the Zerelian fleet entered VORAC space. The planet Korvar loomed ahead, covered in mountains and fortresses. Doran stood in the cockpit as dozens of VORAC warships surrounded them. The communication system crackled, and a deep voice boomed through the speakers. "Identify yourselves, or be destroyed." Velora stepped forward. "I am Queen Velora Zirin of Zerelia. We seek an audience with Warlord Gorvish." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned. "Land your ships, but if you betray us, you will not leave alive." Doran smirked. "Sounds like a friendly welcome." Meeting the Warlord. The Zerelians landed on Korvar and were immediately surrounded by massive VORAC warriors. These beings were covered in thick armor and carried huge energy axes. Doran walked with confidence as they were led to the Great Hall, where Warlord Gorvish waited. He was even larger than the other VORAC, his scared face showing years of battle experience. Valora stepped forward. Warlord Gorvesh, we come seeking an alliance. The VORAC warlord laughed, his voice like thunder. An alliance? The Zarelians are weak, and you bring a human to speak for you. The VORAC warriors around them laughed. Doran stepped forward fearlessly and looked Gorvesh in the eye. I'm not here to beg, Doran said. I'm here to offer you something you want. Gorvesh's amusement faded. And what is that? Doran grinned. A chance to crush the Vorkalf. The room fell silent. The VORAC hated the Vorkalf, but they had never dared to challenge them directly. Gorvesh stroked his chin. And why should we believe you can defeat them? Doran took a step closer. Because I already have. He tossed a Vorkalf officer's insignia onto the warlord's table, the one he had taken from the fallen commander. The VORAC warriors murmured in surprise. Gorvesh picked up the insignia, studying it. His eyes flickered with interest. You killed one of their commanders. Doran smirked. And that was just the start. The warlord's decision. Gorvesh leaned back in his chair, considering. You are bold, human, but words mean nothing. Doran nodded. Then let's settle it the VORAC way. Gorvesh raised an eyebrow. A trial by combat. Doran cracked his knuckles. Winner decides if we fight together. The VORAC warriors cheered. They loved a challenge. Gorvesh grinned. Very well, human champion. If you survive, we will talk. Valora tensed. Doran, you don't have to do this. Doran smirked. Yes, I do. The duel begins. A massive VORAC warrior stepped into the arena. He was a towering figure, covered in thick battle armor, wielding an energy axe the size of a human. Doran took his stance. He had no armor, no energy weapons, just his speed and skill. The VORAC warrior charged, swinging his axe. Doran dodged at the last second, rolling under the attack. The warrior roared and swung again, but Doran was too fast. He leaped onto the VORAC's back, wrapped his arm around the warrior's thick neck, and cut off his air supply. The VORAC stumbled, struggling against Doran's iron grip. Seconds later, he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. The arena fell silent. Then the VORAC warriors erupted in cheers. Gorvesh laughed. Impressive, human. You have proven yourself. He stood and extended his hand. We will fight with you. Doran shook it firmly. Then let's bring the Vorkalf to their knees. The VORAC warriors roared in approval as Warlord Gorvesh gripped Doran's hand firmly. An alliance was forged. The human champion had proven himself, and now the VORAC clans would fight beside the Zarelians against the Vorkalf dominion. Queen Valora Zirin stood beside Doran, watching the VORAC warriors celebrate. Their strength and numbers would be valuable, but time was against them. Ilaris, the Zarelian scholar, stepped forward. Doran, Valora, we intercepted another transmission. The Vorkalf reinforcements are only days away. Gorvesh crossed his arms. Then we must strike first. We will not wait for them to bring more to us. Doran nodded. Agreed. If we attack before they regroup, we have a chance to cripple their fleet. But we need a plan. The battle plan. A holographic map of the star system flickered to life. Ilaris pointed to a strategic location, a supply station orbiting a gas giant. This station serves as a fuel hub for their warships. If we destroy it, we will cut off their reinforcements. Roken, the Zarelian warrior, studied the map. It's well defended. The Vorkalf won't let us take it easily. Doran smirked. Good. That means they won't expect a direct attack. Gorvesh grinned. Then let us give them a battle they will never forget. Preparing for war. The VORAC clans armed themselves with heavy armor and energy axes, while the Zarelian forces prepared their sleek, high-speed fighters. Doran examined his own weapons, a pulse rifle and a combat knife. Valora approached him, her golden eyes serious. Are you ready for this? Doran chuckled. I was born ready. She hesitated, then placed a hand on his arm. Be careful, Doran. He gave her a confident nod. You too, Your Majesty. The attack begins. The combined fleet jumped to the supply station, emerging from hyperspace like a storm. VORAC warships hovered around the station, their dark hulls reflecting the light from the nearby gas giant. Doran stood on the bridge of the VORAC flagship beside Gorvesh. The VORAC warlord grinned. Now, we break them. Doran raised his hand. All ships, attack. The VORAC battleships charged forward, their massive cannons firing. Xyrelian fighters weaved through enemy fire, targeting weak points in the VORAC defenses. Doran leads the charge. Doran and Roken boarded a dropship, leading an elite strike team to the station's command center. As the ship approached, turrets fired, shaking the hull. Brace for impact, the pilot shouted. The dropship crashed into a landing bay, skidding across the metal floor. Before the dust settled, Doran kicked open the hatch and opened fire. VORAC soldiers rushed to defend the station, but they were too slow. Doran and his team fought with brutal precision. Roken swung his plasma sword, cutting down enemies with deadly skill. VORAC warriors charged into battle, their massive axes breaking through enemy defenses. Doran took cover behind a console, firing at approaching guards. He spotted the station commander retreating toward the control room. That's our target, Doran called out. Move. The final confrontation. Doran and Roken chased the VORAC commander through the corridors. The enemy leader, a tall, armored figure, activated a security lock, sealing the doors behind him. We don't have time for this, Roken growled. Doran examined the control panel and smirked. Then let's make our own door. He pulled out an explosive charge and placed it on the sealed door. Boom. The explosion ripped the door open. Inside, the VORAC commander turned to face them, holding a plasma blade. You think you can defeat the Dominion? He snarled. Doran raised his knife. We already have. The final battle began. The VORAC commander fought fiercely, his plasma blade cutting through the air with deadly speed. But Doran was faster. He dodged, countered, and struck with precision. With one final move, Doran disarmed him and knocked him to the ground. The commander gasped, his helmet cracked. This is impossible. Doran smirked. Humans don't believe in impossible. He grabbed the commander's control keycard and deactivated the station's defenses. Victory and the next challenge. With the defenses down, the VORAC and Xyrelian forces overwhelmed the station. The remaining VORAC soldiers surrendered or fled. Gorvesh's voice came through the communicator. Doran, the enemy fleet is retreating. Doran exhaled. They had won. Valora's face appeared on the holoscreen. Doran, you did it. He grinned. We did it. But as the celebrations began, Ilaris's voice interrupted. Doran, there's something you need to see. On the holoscreen, a massive VORAC Dreadnought appeared in the distance. A deep, menacing voice filled the room. I am Lord Zakaros. You have defied the Dominion. Now, you will be destroyed. Doran clenched his fists. Then let's finish this. The image of Lord Zakaros, the supreme warlord of the VORAC Dominion, loomed over the holoscreen. His dark armor gleamed under the dim light, his eyes burning with fury. You have made a grave mistake, human. Your defiance ends now. Doran clenched his fists, standing tall in front of the transmission. You talk too much. If you want to fight, come and get it. Zakaros let out a low, amused chuckle. Foolish words. Let's see how long your courage lasts. The transmission cut off. A warning siren blared. Ilaris turned from the control panel. The Dreadnought is charging its main cannon. It could destroy the entire station in one shot. Gorvesh growled. Then we must strike first. Vylora nodded. We have no choice. This is the final battle. Doran tightened his grip on his rifle. Then let's end this war. The battle begins. The VORAC and Zarelian fleets formed up as the VORAC Dreadnought advanced. Smaller enemy warships swarmed forward, firing relentlessly. The VORAC battleships, massive and heavily armored, pushed through the enemy lines, blasting ships apart with their heavy cannons. The Zarelian fighters, fast and agile, weaved between enemy fire, launching precise strikes at critical weak points. Doran piloted a Zarelian strike ship, leading an elite team toward the Dreadnought. Roken sat beside him, gripping the ship's railings. "Our target is the Dreadnought's energy core," Doran said. "We take that out, the whole ship goes down." "Easier said than done," Roken muttered. "I like a challenge," Doran smirked. Boarding the Dreadnought. Under heavy fire, Doran's strike team breached the Dreadnought's hangar, jumping out with weapons drawn. VORAC warriors rushed to stop them, but the combined strength of the VORAC and Zarelian fighters pushed through. Blades clashed. Energy blasts filled the corridors. Doran led the charge, taking down enemies with precision and skill. Velora fought beside him, her golden eyes burning with determination. "The core is just ahead." They pushed forward, reaching the reactor chamber, a vast, glowing structure at the heart of the ship. The final confrontation. Lord Zakaros stood waiting in front of the core, his massive plasma blade ignited. "You have come far," he said, "but this is where your journey ends." Doran stepped forward, gripping his combat knife. "We'll see about that." The battle began. Zakaros swung his plasma blade, cutting through the air with incredible speed. Doran dodged, countering with a quick slash. Velora and Roken tried to assist, but Zakaros was too powerful. He knocked them aside with a wave of energy. "This fight is between me and him," Doran said, standing tall. Zakaros smirked, "Then prepare to die." They clashed again. Doran's speed matched Zakaros's raw power. Sparks flew as their weapons met. With a final swift move, Doran dodged an attack and plunged his knife into Zakaros's chest. The warlord staggered, eyes wide. "Impossible." Doran pulled his knife free. "Like I said, humans don't believe in impossible." Zakaros fell. The warlord of the VORAC Dominion was defeated. Escape and victory. The reactor was destabilizing. The Dreadnought was going to explode. "Time to go," Velora shouted. Doran and his team rushed to their ships, escaping just as the Dreadnought erupted in a massive explosion. The VORAC forces, seeing their leader fall, retreated. The war was over. A new future. Back on Zarelia, the people celebrated their victory. The VORAC and Zarelians stood united, thanks to Doran's leadership. Velora smiled at Doran. "You have changed the fate of our galaxy." Gorvish grinned. "And you have earned the respect of the VORAC." Doran crossed his arms. "What now?" Velora's golden eyes shone. "Now, we rebuild, together."